Thank you, Mr. Norquist. Mr. Hayes, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Kelly and Ranking Member Thompson. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you. First of all, I am not an economist. I don't work for a think tank. I came here because I became convinced during my time of practice that the existing income tax was actually harming the country and that there should be a better way of collecting the taxes needed to fund the government. I didn't realize I was far right until Mr. Thompson's comments told me, because I've never felt myself that way. I felt myself much more moderate. I'm looking at this not as a Democrat-Republican issue, but as what I believe would be a more effective way of funding the government. I worked for a long time, I will confess, as a tax attorney. I made a lot of money out of all the confusion in the tax code. But I saw time and again people who I worked with who were in different parts of the country get audited and get widely different results, from no tax to assessment of tax on the same investment. The tax code is not sensible. It's very difficult to apply. And as a practical matter, it makes life worse for most people who are working in this country and employing those who are working in this country. So what I'm looking at is trying to be a resource. Maybe it's not the sole answer, but I believe you need to start looking as a committee at ways in which you can fund the government without putting all of the compliance issues on the American people and American business. Let's do it in a way that's pro-growth, because it's a consumption tax, and I think everybody at this table will agree with me, it's going to produce more growth than the income tax. And let's do it where we grant people some authority over their own taxes, because what am I promoting? The FAIRtax. It's a retail sales tax on new retail goods and retail services. Underline new retail goods. If you've got a family of 4, because of provision that we put in the bill, called a prebate, you are going to see that your expenditures up to $40,000 are not subject to tax at all. You talk about a tax credit, they get $40,000 of spending without any tax or the FAIRtax at all. Very, very different than the present system, because what you're also doing with the FAIRtax is not only are you repealing all of the income taxes, the gift tax, the estate tax, but you're also taking and getting rid of the most regressive tax that we have, which is the payroll tax. Every single American, if they make $1,000, or this year $160,000, is going to pay it regardless of family size, regardless of anything else. It's the very definition of regressive. That is gone, eliminated. It's funded through the FAIRtax, the National Retail Sales Tax. It's very obvious. If you don't want to pay as much tax, don't spend as much. If you don't want to pay as much tax, buy used goods and don't pay the tax. But you have a choice. It's not everybody pays the same tax on the same money. We're not children. Treat us like adults. Let us make the decision. Now, having said that, anything that I can do to assist you in any way, I'm happy to do it. Whether it means not pushing through the FAIRtax, but it helps improve the system, then I'm fine. And so I'm here. I'm happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman Kelly. Mr. Hayes, when it comes to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the facts speak for themselves. TCJA delivered tremendous benefits to America's economy as well as American families, in particular working class families. Following passage of TCJA, the lowest income earners saw their wages increase at a rate that was 50% higher than the rate for those with higher incomes. The bottom 20% of earners saw their average federal tax rate fall to its lowest level in 40 years, with low and middle income families saving at least $2,000 on their tax bill. At the same time, in the first 2 years after TCJA passed, economic growth was a full percentage point higher than forecasted. Wages increased by 4.9%, the fastest 2-year growth in real wages in 2 decades. Part of the reason for this success was TCJA's simplification of the tax code and a focus on delivering for working families. Mr. Hayes, what are the benefits of a simpler tax system to working families?
Well, the benefits for not only working families, but for all families, retired or otherwise, is that you have gone away from a system that requires the IRS, it requires determination of income, and it requires reporting and compliance by all Americans to a system that allows you to pay your taxes when you go to the store and make retail purchases. You get to keep all your money, Chairman. You get to keep all of your money and you decide what to pay. I've got reams of economic data I'm happy to provide to you that dispute what's been said here about the rate on the fair tax, the idea that you have to increase to 80% is a different bill. It obviously, I read the report, they said, here's the way it should be written and here's why it should cost this much. It's not accurate to say it's the fair tax bill. But if you don't like the bill, but you do like simplification and eliminating the income tax, let's take it as a base, and with someone like you, let's make it work.
So part of the fair tax sales pitch and other similar proposals is to massively simplify how revenues are collected.
Right.
Can you please elaborate on how a fundamental shift in the tax code that the fair tax represents would impact how families interact with the IRS and comply with their tax obligations?
They are not, because they're no longer complying with their tax obligations, except for the fact that the retail merchant or retail provider of services charges them a tax when they check out at Walmart or wherever they are. There's no compliance for the American. We've taken the burden of compliance off the American people, individuals, and we placed it with businesses who are now doing the same thing in 45 states and the District of Columbia. So we're not making it more difficult, we're actually making it much more simple. If you take out the cost of compliance, if you take out the fact that every single product has a chain leading up to that product of production, and each step is taxed, you're eliminating that with the fair tax. You're eliminating it with a VAT. But the fair tax is much simpler because there's many fewer people, and they talk about evasion. I hear this about evasion. When you go to Walmart, how are you going to evade the fair tax? Over 90% of the retail sales are now made from less than 10% of the retailers. How are you going to evade it? You're going to tell Walmart, I don't want to pay it today? No.